Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today on this webinar. My name is Sean Gores. I'm a technical sales engineer with OpenVPN. I'm going to start the webinar in a minute or so, but before we do, I want to make a couple of points here. First of all, if you have any questions at any time throughout the webinar, please go ahead and ask. You can type your question in the Q&A box, and I have a few of my colleagues here ready to answer those questions. Also, I'm going to open the floor at the end of the presentation for any remaining questions at that time. Again. One more thing that I'm going to mention here, this presentation or this webinar is more of the presentation and conversation today. If you need any type of demo or you want to see this product in action, within your requirements or your use cases or environment, you can request for demo. We do a private demo just for you based on your description and your use cases that you want. In order to do that, you go to our website, openvpn.net, and then right now is this button on the upper right corner of the screen, homepage. You click on that, you type some information so we can get a hold of you and set up an appropriate time that works for you so we can do the demo for you. We have sales engineers, they would love to do this all day long. So take advantage of the demo as well. This is highly recommended for businesses that are thinking about using this product or utilizing this OpenVPN Cloud in their environment. Now today we're going to talk about ZTNA with OpenVPN Cloud, and we're going to talk about how to minimize the attack surface. The IT network and services are a major portion of the digital attack surface. So in this webinar, we will explore, or I'm going to try to explain, the foundational technologies of OpenVPN Cloud for people that they are not familiar with the product, and how the use of the OpenVPN Cloud automatically decreases the attack surface. And these days, zero trust is really popular. Everybody talks about it. We're gonna look at how use of zero trust principles further minimizes the attack surface, obviously using zero trust principles with OpenVPN Cloud. That's what we were talking about. And how segregation of traffic based on the level of risk leads to efficient use of security solutions. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and start. So with organizations having resources scattered between on-prem, cloud, SaaS, and having workforce all over the globe, security and securing communications has become very complex, also very expensive, and the manpower and resources are kind of exhaustive also. So OpenVPN Cloud is a service that integrates a multi-tenant virtual network with critical security functions that are easy to configure. So in another word, OpenVPN Cloud is a cloud delivered service that integrates virtual networking with essential security capabilities. So you can connect your resources such as private networks, users, IoT devices, applications, and so on without a complex, hard to scale hardware. So basically what I'm saying, with OpenVPN Cloud, you can have zero trust access to all applications and the internet, as well as site-to-site networking, while enforcing identity-based access control, preventing malicious network activity, and providing protection by blocking malicious website access. We did a webinar a couple months ago, I think it was in December, that I went through configuration step by step. So the link to that webinar will be in the handout that we're going to distribute during or maybe at the end of this webinar. And also there will be some other links to other step-by-step configurations and how-tos of different features of this product. So please take a look at it if you're interested, and you're going to get a better idea of the step that it takes to configure things. We make our services accessible from over 30 worldwide points of presence or regions, as you can see on the slides here. All of these regions are connected to our high-speed core network using full mesh technology. So to ensure maximum performance and to alleviate the operational and staffing costs that come with operating multiple security appliances, we vertically integrate critical network security functions such as firewalls, identity-based access controls, content filtering, intrusion detection, and prevention into our multi-tenant points of presence, basically. So this multi-tenant service means that there is no waiting around for server orchestrations. As soon as you sign up and choose a network cloud ID, you get access to a virtual network. Now, this network is dedicated for your use, and we call it Wide Area Private Cloud, or WPC. You're going to hear me mentioning WPC a lot throughout this webinar. So in another word, Wide Area Private Cloud, or WPC, basically is a secure private overlay network created just for you and is ready for use immediately. So you'll be connecting the networks and resources that host your applications to the WPC, and then you configure everything else through the admin UI or admin portal. So as you can see on the slide, there are some of the technologies listed here that are worth mentioning. One is separation of control and data plane. Control plane are built using cloud native technologies, and as a result we have unlimited services scale. The high availability as a result of a full mesh core network, which provide us with multiple direct paths to other regions. Also, OpenVPN Cloud leverages a shared resources model, vertical integration of technology, and a focus on delivering dynamic access control. So what that means basically allows you to drive down costs, secure your business at scale, and provide a seamless experience for your team, no matter what the size is. So another thing is that there are two primary types of cloud services. The first one is a single tenancy, which is like a single family home. And the second one is multi-tenancy, which is like an apartment building. The key difference is that the walls that separate tenants from each other. This form of cloud services, I mean the multi-tenancy, makes a greater pool of resources available to a larger group of people for much lower cost. So another benefits of multi-tenancy is the resource usage. So that brings us to attack surface. Obviously that was in the title of this webinar, so let's talk about attack surface. What is the attack surface? So according to NIST, National Institute of Standard and Technology, the set of points on the boundary of a system element, or an environment where an attacker can try to enter, cause an effect on, or extract data from that system or system element or environment is the attack surface. I know, it's a mouthful. So let's make it simple. To make it simple, it's defined as a total of number of all possible entry points for unauthorized access into any system. So, as you can see on the slide, creating a private overlay network and using it to provide zero trust access to private and public trusted applications reduces attack surface than other strategies which promote exposing the apps to the internet and provide access through an identity proxy solution. Basically, attack surface decreases as we move toward left on this slide by making sure that public apps are being treated as private and trusted and accessible through WPC, and only trusted endpoints and devices are accessing WPC. So as I mentioned like about 30 seconds ago, attack surface is about the number of points. Now, let us compare a service model based on the identity proxy that is using a private overlay approach. As soon as you expose your application server to the internet, you're basically exposing it to all the threats and make it visible to everyone. Any kind of device can try and access your service or resource and try to basically discover and exploit vulnerabilities. So as you can see, the points of exposures and attack vectors are increasing. Now consider OpenVPN Cloud, where you keep all your applications private, isolated from the internet, and only accessible via the WPC. So immediately the exposure is reduced. Now next, there are no inbound connection to your private networks. You can basically set your firewalls to accept nothing inbound because the networks makes only outbound connections to OpenVPN Cloud regions. So that's very powerful. Now, basically what you're doing, you're moving the risk of denial of service attacks to OpenVPN Cloud regions, which have multiple security features based on OpenVPN protocols. Next, only devices whose users have been authenticated and have received a connection profile which contains a digital certificate can connect and attempt to access your services. We're going actually, I think maybe today or tomorrow, we're launching device enforcement feature which will let you to provide authorized devices ID and only allow those authorized devices to connect. Again, I think that's going to be available either today or tomorrow on this new release. So as you can see, with each additional control, the attack surface is being minimized just by using OpenVPN Cloud and its features. So now what about access to public SaaS applications such as Salesforce or Office 365 or any other ones, ServiceNow, any other ones? With OpenVPN Cloud, you can direct just the traffic to configured public applications via WPC basically. And then you can enforce obviously login restriction to those SaaS applications. This basically extends attack surface minimization to your public services as well. In addition to use OpenVPN Cloud, some of the best practices obviously are use of zero trust, which we're going to talk about in a minute, microsegmentation, patchings, and so on. So that brings us to Zero Trust Network Access, or ZTNA. Now, Zero Trust operates under the assumption that there are no users or machines that applications can trust with unlimited network access. This doesn't mean that employees and vendors are untrustworthy, but simply that there is data breach potential if that employee access were to be abused by unauthorized users or malicious attacks. It's a mindset shift from user trust to enforcing digital trust, basically. That's what I'm saying. So there is no solution that can properly protect the business, but a set of approaches or a layered approach which can create a better protection for your organization can create some kind of protections. And there is no argument that data breaches are costly and can bankrupt a small business and can have dire effects on a small size or a mid-sized organization or even large enterprise. So as long as humans run networks, human error will be expected. But those slip-ups don't have to result in serious damages. So implementing procedures and protocols that take a holistic view of security, including zero trust access, can make a huge difference. To help increase user productivity and security in remote work environments, which a lot of companies are doing these days, many organizations are turning into more modern cloud-native security solutions, again, such as OpenVPN Cloud, that can provide zero trust network access, or ZTNA. One way to move towards implementing ZTNA is cloaking your private services. As you can see on the screen, on the slides on the left side, basically by cloaking, we mean services are being kept private. This reduces attack surface. No private network routes are leaked. Obviously, when you cloak it, no incoming tunnel connections to the network. As I mentioned, a minute ago, everything can be configured to do outbound to WPC, and point of presence or regions basically terminate connections and protect from any type of denial of attacks. Now, another step towards or move towards implementing ZTNA is segmentation. So, as I mentioned earlier, strong cybersecurity policies should always be part of a layered approach and should include least privilege access and network segmentations. Lateral movement attacks can be easily prevented with segmentation. With segmentation, only authorized services available as routes. We have a patent pending domain routing segments that it can be configured by apps or applications. You can also use hosts to access private apps and not the networks. Multi-WPC allows a WPC to be used to segment based on use case, department, privilege access, and so on. And then obviously the per-app firewalls only allows authorized protocols to have access. Zero Trust Network Access or ZTNA creates secure boundaries around resources. Typically, legacy VPN will push the entire route of a private network to every client, but OpenVPN Cloud automatically microsegments the network based on the configured IP services and their authorized users. So when a user connects, it then sends routes to just the authorized microsegments. Now, the last part of this slides is the identity. We do have a built-in two-factor authentication. You can also use single sign-on by using SAML or LDAP with your own, for example, Active Directory or Azure AD or any other identity providers you may be using. And then you can, configure access control for your network or networks and hosts and user groups, and also the digital certificates for IoTs and unattended clients. Now let's look at the steps on how to create a ZTNA with OpenVPN Cloud. As you can see on the slides, there are five steps, and we're going to go through each step. So the first step, creating wide area private cloud or WPC, and then we're going to define the trusted applications and IP services. Then we do define trusted users and devices, then access policies, and then we're going to enable shield against cyber threats. These are the steps that we need to take to create a zero trust network access with OpenVPN Cloud. As soon as you sign up and choose a network cloud ID, you get access to a virtual network. This network is dedicated for your use, and as I mentioned it earlier at the beginning of this presentation, it is called a wide area private cloud or WPC. So in another word, wide area private cloud or WPC is basically a secure private overlay network created just for you and is ready for your use immediately. You'll be connecting the networks and resources that host your applications to WPC, and then as I mentioned it earlier, you configure everything else through admin portal. I'm going to show you the admin portal briefly in a few minutes. Now, keep in mind that you can create an account and use cloud or VPN Cloud with 3 connections for free. We don't even ask for credit card. So if you would like to test the product and see how it works in your environment, you can sign up with 3 connections for free. During the sign up, you have to choose a cloud ID, which then be the unique identifier for your WPC and eventually becomes the subdomain for openvpn.com. And basically this is the address that you use to connect to the admin portal or and import the connection profiles for the clients. So basically this is our admin portal. As you can see, this is my cloud ID that it's here, and this is the address. As I said, cloud ID can become a subdomain of openvpn.com. So this is the address that I use to access my admin UI, and everything that I need to configure, it's here, and I configure it through this portal. Now the second step is defining trusted applications and IP services. So if you would like to streamline the process of accessing distributed applications, OpenVPN Cloud application-based domain routing is both faster and easier than configuring and managing IP services. So basically what that means is that now you can route to networks and hosts by creating public or private applications using only domain names without the need of configuring IP routings. That makes it easy to set up apps using domain names for the networks that host them basically. Now, your WPC take care of all the routings without needing any IP address routes or any IP address route information, even if there are IP addresses overlapping between your different networks. So in the new admin UI, the network and host configuration have been improved to eliminate the need to define an application or IP subnet service in a separate steps. So basically you can now create services by defining application types, which is protocols and ports, and the IP services types during the configuration. So again, if I go back to the admin portal, as you can see, if I extend the networks menu, you can see I got the applications here and IP services. So I can add the IP services or I can add the applications here by just giving name, selecting the network that it belongs to, domain, and then create it. Same thing for the IP services. Again, the same thing. I can just click on add IP services, enter the appropriate information, and add them. I can also do that when I'm adding my networks to WPC by going through the wizard. I can do the same thing. Now, I have to mention, again, as I mentioned it earlier, that you can configure application and IP services on the host base instead of the network. So again, if I expand the host here on the left side, you can see the applications and IP services, and I can add applications or I can add IP services to my host here as well. So again, I can do the same thing when I go through the wizard when I'm adding a host, or I can just go ahead here and add them quickly as needed. So with the accessible applications and IP services are defined, access group then can be configured to implement basically identity-aware access policies. Now, I keep saying applications and IP services. What the applications means in the context of OpenVPN Cloud, applications are basically any source that can be configured using domain names. So even if you just choose to expose only one or two applications using domain names, then you configure it in the applications part of the admin portal. And obviously you have to choose the protocols and the ports which can act as a firewall. As soon as you configure an application and that application basically become a trusted application, all traffic will be directed through WPC in order to access that resource. So by the same token, for the public applications, you need a network with access to internet. So it can act as an internet gateway. Now, when I say public applications, I mean something like SaaS applications like Salesforce again. So as soon as you configure those public applications to go through WPC, they're becoming low-risk applications. A good example would be directing traffic to a SaaS application, as just mentioned, like Salesforce, through WPC. Now you may ask, why do I want to do that? Why do I want to send traffic to my SaaS applications like Salesforce or Office 365 through WPC? Well, a good rule of thumb is to create protection against bad actors and compromised credentials. So by configuring your SaaS as a trusted application, you're making sure that the traffic is being encrypted through WPC. Also, you can implement identity-based access policy, so only the right people or right devices have access to that application. You can also use IP addresses instead of the domain name. Obviously, that's not something that we encourage you to do because we think that everything should be accessible by domain name. But if you need to create access to certain resources by IP address, then you have the option of or options with OpenVPN Cloud to create the routes, which we call it IP services, which like applications, you configure ports and protocols for it as well. And then you have to actually, for this scenario, I mean the IP services, you need to use the traditional IP address routing and configure a route for the network as well. So this way OpenVPN Cloud knows what subnet those resources are located and how to route the traffic. So if I want to show you on the portal, again, the applications and IP services here under networks, if I expand them, and then under the host, this is where you can configure or add applications or IP services. Before we move to the other slide, the whole point here is that anything that you configure as trusted will be directed through WPC, and everything else will go through internet directly. You also have to deploy one or more connectors on the networks hosting those trusted private applications or providing internet access to those trusted public services or applications. So what is the connector? Connector basically is a software can be deployed on a lightweight VM. So we have connectors for pretty much all the big name cloud services, operating systems such as Windows, iOS, Linux, and then we do have connectors for some compatible routers and so on. Now again, to deploy connectors is pretty simple. There are a number of ways to do it. You can do it through the networks. When you go add a network through the wizard, you can just click on connector under the network when you expand it, and you can add the connector here, give it a name, choose the network region, and add them. You can also add the connectors under the host as well. Again, same thing. You can add the connector, give it a name, choose the host that you want to add, and regions. Now, if you see here, when I go to deploy connectors, I do have the options of the cloud providers such as AWS, Azure, GCP, Google Cloud Platform. Also for the operating system, Linux, Windows, Mac OS, virtual private server providers such as DigitalOcean, and then compatible routers. The list is here. So there are a number of ways to deploy these connectors. So now it's time to define our trusted users and devices. Trusted users are created automatically when users successfully authenticate via federated authentication or LDAP. We can also create trusted users manually and authenticate via passwords and two-factor authentication. Another thing that I need to mention here, user groups are created manually and associated with users either manually or by mapping to LDAP and SAML attributes. When it comes to devices, you can set a limit on the number of device per users. Trusted devices obviously are created automatically when a user authenticate, but you can also create devices manually. And certificate-based authentication can be used for always on unattended operations or devices such as IoTs. When it comes to defining access policies, role-based or least privilege access can be configured using access group. Again, that can happen or be configured during the through the admin portal. Access groups basically lets you enforce identity-based policies so the users get access only to what they need to, basically trusted applications or IP services. Then also access group permits communications between different user groups. So private IP addresses of trusted applications are never exposed to a connected user, so keeping your applications and your private network basically cloaked. OpenVPN Cloud Shield provides you with a built-in intrusion detection system as well as intrusion protection system, IDS or IPS, for your WPC. It does monitor the traffic flowing through your WPC in order to provide you with the detailed statistics on traffic it has identified as malware, intrusion activity, denial of service, and other types of threats. Now, in addition to monitoring for threats, Shield also monitors some other categories of traffic that may lead to a loss in employees' productivity. For example, social networking, gaming, and peer-to-peer applications. So when you see the statistics on the type of traffic detected and the number of times that the type of that traffic was detected, then you can go ahead and drill down and investigate exactly which user device generated that traffic, and then you can approach it and fix the issue. So in addition to IDS/IPS functionality, shields also provide domain name system or DNS filtering to protect your WPC users from malicious and unwanted websites, even if their internet traffic is not being carried by the white private cloud or WPC. Again, DNS-based content filtering allows you, as the administrator, to block domain name resolutions of websites that fall into unwanted categories. Once blocking is enabled, again, the statistic of blocked domains or events are being presented, and you can investigate exactly which user device generated that DNS request, and it belongs to what device and then what category was it, so you can approach and fix the issue. There is a video on how to configure the Cyber Shield. The link should be in the handout that we give you. I highly recommend you watch that video. Actually, there are a couple of videos, one for traffic and one for domain filtering. As you look at this slide with the title Untrusted Internet Traffic Routing Options, the main point here is that trusted traffic, both private and select trusted internet destinations, are being accessed through the WPC. What about the untrusted traffic that is not passing through the WPC? Well, you can completely block it as shown in the restricted internet options on the bottom of the slides. Or you can route everything, even the untrusted traffic, to WPC. This basically allows you to use our IDS service and bring the traffic to one of your internet gateways on or your on-prem security stack, basically. So what I'm saying here, the OpenVPN Cloud just doesn't just tunnel traffic to private resources on your connected networks. It also gives you unmatched control over internet-bound traffic routing by user group, networks, or hosts. So whether your organization needs to enforce a strict control by completely blocking internet access and limiting access to private and trusted internet destinations, or tunnel all internet traffic from a connected network, application servers, or remote users to one or more connected private networks. So as you can see on this slides, we have three options to route the traffic. We got the split tunnel on, split tunnel off, and restricted internet. The split tunnel on is the default value for the internet access setting associated, again, with the user groups, networks, and or hosts. With a split tunnel on, only configured private or public applications and IP services traffic will go through the WPC. With the split tunnel on, again, you can expand security features such as working in tandem with other security providers. I'm going to talk about that a little bit on the next slide. So what that means that as an example, you can send all private applications and some other low-risk internet apps through your OpenVPN Cloud, and all other high-risk internet traffic through a third-party cybersecurity provider like Zscaler. Now, when it comes to split tunnel off, once internet access is set to split tunnel off for certain user groups, network, or host, internet traffic from those sources will go through WPC and exit through one or more networks that is being set as internet gateway. So this basically ensures that all internet traffic to be routed through some sort of UTMs or threat management, which can enforce corporate security policies, for example. Also, all traffic can now be protected by CyberShield, the IDS and IPS, in addition to use of your UTM at the internet gateway. Now, the last one, the restricted internet access, again, is a built-in OpenVPN Cloud feature which allows you to block all internet access for selected user groups, devices, or networks, except to the trusted configured internet destination. Restricted internet access enables organizations to control employees' access to both internal and external applications. If you remember a few seconds ago, I was talking about that you can use OpenVPN Cloud in tandem with other security provider, and I kind of give you an example that you can send all private applications and trusted applications that are being considered low risk now, since maybe they were configured as a trusted applications or IP services through the OpenVPN Cloud, and everything else that's high risk because it hasn't been configured as a trusted application or IP services through a third-party cybersecurity provider like Zscaler. So that brings us to Zero Trust Network Access Differentiators. Now, as you can see on this slide, there are a lot of good points here, such as segregation of trusted and untrusted traffic flows, multiple options to secure untrusted internet traffic. We just talked about that. Restricted internet access, obviously. ZTNA for IoT devices, because IoT devices can authenticate using digital certificates and get access to applications based on identity aware policies. Then we got ZTNA between sites, built-in security, that's content filtering, IDS and IPS, we call it Cyber Shield. The automatic network segmentations, again, another differentiator here we're talking about. Access to applications hosted on networks with overlapping IP addresses. That's another one. And self-service scaling, on-demand scale the number of connections needed for ZTNA. You can do up and down with immediate effect. You don't have to wait for anything. We started this webinar saying that we're going to explore, and hopefully I was able to explain or talk about the foundational technologies of OpenVPN Cloud, such as the separation of control and data plane, full mesh connected core network, and vertical integration of security and data forwarding stack. Then we talk about how to use the use of OpenVPN Cloud automatically decreases the attack surface, and how use of zero trust principles further minimizes the attack surface. The zero trust security model ensures only the right people have the right level of access to the right resources at the right time. And then we talk about how segregation of traffic based on level of risk leads to efficient use of security solutions. We also look at the steps that it takes to create a zero trust network access with OpenVPN Cloud future. As I mentioned earlier, this was just a discussion, a presentation. We do have videos that it goes through step by step of these configurations. Also, again, I want to mention to take advantage of our demo that we do privately for you based on your use cases, your environment, and your requirements. Again, this is highly recommended for businesses. You go to our website, openvpn.net, click on request demo. Pretty basic information such as the email address, the product that you're looking at, a little bit of explanation about your use case, and then we set up a time that's convenient for you, and we can do a demo and answer any questions you have. You can also sign up for the account by clicking on get started. Remember, you get 3 free connections. We don't even ask for credit card, so you can just click on get started, choose OpenVPN Cloud, and create the account, create your WPC, and then start using the product that you can gain some experience and see how the products work in your environment. Again, at this time, that brings us to the end of this webinar. So I would like to open the floor for any remaining questions you may have here. Please go ahead, type it in the Q&A box, and we'll be more than happy to answer those questions.